shut up, quit fucking with my heart. That chain so cold, got my neck on cry therapy. Gang saying fuck them, then fuck them, they my enemy. Rappers thinking they offended me. Made 100 million saying fuck you too. Pulled up on the devil and I broke jail. Let me see. I made millionaires from my coattails. Working on a list of people that demented me. Big it, I'ma tell you. Got me hot now, fuck that, tell me calm down. More about killer with the eastern block sign. So from downtown, but my house up in the streets. My chain for the jaw, but my wrist no testament.
Feeling extravagant, feeling inhabitant, devil's the advocate, bills of the sacrament, chasing it all with 8 ounces of activist.
My head all screwed up. all I wanna do.
Stocking up for ammo, always ready for the next. I'm about to fuck. She fucking with the devil.
Do not do it, baby, please, can you stop?
Nah, bitch, I'm a demon and I'm running on the clock.
On the 19th of June 1954, a coach of 11 children arrived at the Robbers Cave State Park in Oklahoma. A day later, another group of 11 would also arrive at the camp. Both groups were unaware of the other, and throughout Stage 1, the experimenters would keep this the case of carefully managing the two's activities throughout the park. The boys would stay in log cabins alongside the Moccasin Creek, where they could swim, play and explore among the nearby woods. Each group had junior camp counsellors, who were universities. They would stay with the boys all the time, and there were also senior camp counsellors who were participant observers who stayed with the boys for around 12 hours a day. Sharif had instructed these assistants strictly to not influence the study in any way. Although there were two groups, their experience in the first few days was very similar. After the 19th of June, the first stage began. This began even on the coach ride to the camp, where boys in their separate... The rerun was planned to take place beginning in June for 3 weeks of the summer of 1954. The experiment would have 22 boys, all from similar backgrounds, but vitally not to have ever had any previous interactions with one another. But where to get so many children? It's not like you could just go take a class from school, as there would be prejudices, in-groups, microcultures and already inevitable rivalries. All of this could muddy a potential experiment. In order to find a group large enough, a city had to be selected to find the subjects. The experimenters settled on Oklahoma. Sharif decided that a maximum of 1 boy per school could be selected. Researchers were dispatched throughout the city to its many schools, and armed with higher education credentials and a letter managed to get permission from the principals to go into the schoolyard to observe 5th grader boys playing. These credentials also gained access for the researchers to the school records. This, compared to the modern world of stranger danger, really blows my mind. Oh, the 1950s, where a degree and a letter will get you in anywhere. In total, around 200 children were selected. This would require a little more selection down to... Anyway, to cut a long story short, around 5 or 6 children per school were selected, rated top to bottom in preference, and their parents were contacted in the same order. The parents were given the same explanation of the study as the principals, that the Sharif team was looking to study the interaction of group activities within teams and how they would act during sporting activities and their attitudes towards winning or losing. The parents were explicitly told that visiting their child during the 3 weeks was prohibited and the camp would cost $25, which apparently on the inflation calculator is around $261 in 2022 money. Eventually the 22 participants were selected and thus the experiment could begin. The overall concept of the experiment would be copied from the 1949 and failed 1953 studies, but would take a 3-stage form. Sheriff named the first stage in-group formation. This would take the space of a week, where 2 groups were kept separate, and team-building exercises were undertaken to form an in-group bond within the participants. Games and treasure hunts were planned during Stage 1 to help build friendships and in-group alliances. Stage 2 would be the conflict or friction phase. This would involve a tournament between the two groups, consisting of sports like baseball, tug of war and a scavenger hunt, but also experimental tests like bean counting competitions. A trophy was promised for the winners of the competition, as well as prizes like knives and medals. Oh, the 1950s, where pre-teens were given weapons.
Well done.
Your team has 10 frags left.
Keep it up.
Three more kills, then you win. One more kill, and your team will win.
Let's go, my brothers.
First frag goes to your team. The enemies have taken the lead.
speech, right? Find by my side, so keep pulling me. And it's all right, don't care how they young. Jesus with them 40 wheels, don't walk, he driving water. Anytime, any place, any hood. Stay good till it fucking make woods to the sage lines on expensive plates. Tears on my diamond chain, stow it down, living fast. When I'm spitting game, show me how that pussy shade. Joseph comment with my shame, mama crying for my pain. When they ever my family until there's nothing left. Try to stay if you don't friends, hope we get fucking, I don't get fast. I'm on my feeling and talking fast, but the money that I got so late, blow with the money that be in my past.
These motherfuckers look to me for help. They bring the ace and the cards I was dealt. I'm 31, still don't know how to take care of myself. Honestly, I'm scared that I might melt. Leave behind a bunch of black spots on a white belt. Maybe on the next night, I'll come back as a nice bell. There's a fine line between me and you. The biggest difference is I'm gonna keep the positive. From the bullshit that's trying to me through, but I'm still shining. Baby girl, wildin', catch me right by with that look in my eyes. My mother said I'm my life. Away from my girls, but I'm still the same. Standing tall over my grave. Make sure it's filled with all the people we sample that they say. Make sure you throw the flags in and all the money we made. I can put them on my phone. It ain't my taste, it ain't my taste. Shawty wanna marry me, I said you better off in debt. If it didn't work out, baby, I'll be real off the again. Remember we'll see private jet, private beaches to access. Fuck on me, baby, I'm still a messing up that data thread. That's great, pop, nah. Try me all I can be and I waste my time. Bring up insanity, I can't make up my mind. Yeah, I battle my vanity and I make my mind.
Upon returning to Turkey, Sharif was offered a position teaching at Ankara University. During his time at the university, he was very open about his anti-fascist views. At a time with Germany falling under the spell of Nazism, Sharif was highly critical of Hitler and became a communist ideological supporter. This would get him into trouble in the mid-1940s, when in 1944 he was detained with a number of Turkish Communist Party members. Turkey during World War II was a neutral power for the most part until it sided with the Allies in February 1945. But the country was fearful of a Soviet invasion and sought to secure itself with the capitalist Western Allies. This was around the same time that Sharif decided to leave Turkey and return to the USA after being detained, in fear of a harsher punishment for his political activities, as the country looked further to the west in its political alignment. Sharif, a graduate from 2 US universities, found his Marxist views in the late 1940s a benefit to his career, as the social academic environment at the time was far more left-leaning. This led to his book The Psychology of Ego Involvement, 1997, published from Princeton University. But being left-leaning wasn't to be a benefit for too much longer, as the dark shadow of the Cold War loomed and the rise of McCarthyism. By the beginning of the 1980s, Sharif's social, political and professional ties to Turkey fell apart during the anti-communist movement. To add further insult to injury, Ankara University officially fired him, citing his marriage to a US citizen. Oh yes, I nearly forgot to talk about Carolyn, his wife. The couple met in 1945 when Carolyn, who at the time was a research assistant at Princeton University under Mr. Sharif. She had gained a master's degree in 1944 while studying under Wendell Johnson of Monster Studies. Their professional relationship developed into a personal, then romantic, culminating in their marriage in December 1945. The two would go on to produce multiple works in the psychology and social psychological fields. Okay, well, that's a little bit of a background to the experimenters. Let's look at the experiment itself. Starting in 1945, the Sharifs began to look at the field of social in-group. Let me dust off my dictionary for a second. An in-group is a small group of people in an organisation or society whose members share the same interests, language, etc., and try to keep other people out. The Sharifs sought to artificially create in-groups among boys to see if they could turn these groups against one another to study the inter-group conflict. The first experiment would take place in the summer of 1949 with 24 1 to 12-year-old boys from lower middle-class Protestant backgrounds at an isolated camp in Middle Grove. It will be funded by Yale University and the Department for Scientific Research of the American Jewish Community. The reason for all the children having the same background was to eliminate differences apart from personality between the boys. Sharif would, for the experiment, disguise himself as Mr. Musée, the camp caretaker, as a way for him to observe the behaviour of his subjects. The experiment would be formed of 3 stages. The first consisted of all the boys taking part in activities amongst each other and were allowed to form friendships. After a while, the 24 boys were divided into 2 groups. The experimenters deliberately separated the budding friendships in their selection of each cohort of 12 children. From then on, stage 2 commenced, where each group would only be allowed to interact within each other. This was to try and establish an in-group mentality. The team buildings were conducted where a common goal appealed to all in the group. By the end of this stage, Sharif noted that friendships were bonding within the individual groups and a hierarchical structure had formed. They found that the boys preferred interacting with their own in-group over the other. Although this seems like a clean-cut hypothesis confirmation, it wasn't so perfect, but we will discuss that later on. Now, with the 2 groups, stage 3 would involve adversarial competition. It was observed that the 2 groups would act hostile to one another, and although acting democratically internally in their 12-strong teams, the boys didn't conduct themselves accordingly with the outcome. Sharif tried to restore harmony at the end of the study by giving the boys a common enemy to unite against. They did this by beating a softball team from outside the camp, although tensions still existed between the 2 groups.
They should have known better than to fret. The symptoms aren't a bug, they're a feature.
Because this is going to purge out everything. When you're detoxing and doing my work, you're going to be expelling all those parasites. And
These poor women explained how, along with supernatural amounts of diarrhea, they both suffered strokes. Or sorry, not diarrhea, waterfalls.
Waterfalls, but in different context, different intention, and different outcome.
Okay, explosive diarrhea.
One of them actually had 2 strokes, leading up to which she was already having concerning symptoms. But when she contacted Jillian and her moderators at the time, they only egged her on to keep going.
I talked to one of her moderators. The moderator said, well, work off on the juice and see what happens. If it goes away, it's just a healing symptom. Well, it didn't go away. It got worse. MRIs proved that I had 2 strokes. And she was very irritated. How do you know? And you believed them, she said to me.
The other woman had a blood pressure reading of 205/185 at her worst point, which is simply harrowing. She was slurring her words extremely badly, and her face was drooping. She knew she was right on the verge of a stroke. And the worst part of all of this is that, based on the horrific consequences of her health recommendations, Jillian didn't even flinch. Nothing can deter her from her delusions whatsoever or cause her to even have a shred of guilt. She just blamed her symptoms for not being dedicated enough.
So basically, all this how dare you? Because it is a phone you guys came to me.
Jillian claimed it would have been worse had they not been drinking her fermented vegetable solution, as if these strokes occurred by themselves. The chili juice actually prevented it from being worse. She would also post on social media about these 2 women, calling the strokes healing symptoms.
lady, she went to the hospital because she had little mini strokes. And the doctor said this, and that. They corroborated because because, you know, these hospitals want money. When you're dealing with healing symptoms, you're gonna be doing something that may be new because you've just addressed a future trigger.
Surprisingly, 2 other women came on the show to attest to how helpful Jilly Juice was in treating their chronic illnesses. They didn't get a chance to go in depth, so if anything, it was likely the other part of Jillian's protocol that helped them, which prescribes a general plan of clean eating. Also of note was that one of these 2 women was giving the juice to her children, although only in small quantities. Also enlisted the help of the YouTuber Jeff Holiday, who had researched and covered Jillian extensively to try and talk some sense into her. It was to no avail. Jeff and Dr. Phil both pointed out that she was making her advice even more dangerous by encouraging people to go off their prescribed medications in conjunction with starting the Jilly Juice protocol. Holiday also commented on her being the cult-like aspect of what Jillian does, in that anyone who has doubts or questions is promptly kicked out of the community.
To the haters that attack me, you can either join us or you can go and live your controlled lifespan for the rest of your life.
After this stellar appearance, you wouldn't expect anyone to come within a 5-mile radius of this woman. But think again, business was still unfortunately booming for Jillian. The government can't properly prosecute her because she doesn't sell Jilly Juice, she just gives out the Krabby Patty secret formula for free. She does monetize her drip in other ways, such as by selling access to private forums and doing phone consultations. She also has a couple of books, which somehow in illuminating the clear details of her ideology. Based on numbers, people have paid for consultations and memberships for her site. Some get $500,000 in 1 year alone. So even without low-level grift, Jillian herself is still absolutely milking it. To this day, she uploads winding rants of up to 2 hours on her YouTube channel daily, with titles like Magic Kinetic Energy, Music and Trauma-Based Mind Control, and Dr. Phil Strokes, which sounds like the first NSFW video ever. She's revealed some interesting tidbits in her videos, such as that the Jilly Juice recipe calling for a tablespoon of salt was a typo, and that it was actually meant to be a teaspoon. Also, after all this time, she realized she could switch from pink salt to table salt because it's cheaper. She admits she just went with pink salt in the beginning because it was easier to market. As for what's happened to Jillian ever since going on Dr. Phil, recent developments include, but are not limited to, the allegation that she killed her dog. Yeah, this theory started when people took notice of multiple clips of Jillian discussing how her dog suffers from seizures, but that she refuses to take it to the vet. She also talked about that she was feeding it food such as pizza, steak, and eggs, and that this must have been helping, otherwise it would have been much, much worse. Worst of all, the dog had a large lump on his belly, which people were speculating was a tumor, but she still wouldn't take it to the vet. February 2023, when it sadly passed away. It's safe to say you should keep your pets and any middle-aged women in your family as far away from Jillian.
Stand over me now, someone stands on my shoulder. When I'm in a classroom, I always have to sit to the rear. I can't sit because somebody's going to poison it when I walk out. And I know it's not, but it still kind of registers back in the back of my mind.
The custody battle was still ongoing after the trial, and Ramon's appearance on Dr. Phil is unknown. However, a subsequent update on the situation emerged after a couple of years. Tragically, he resorted to a disturbing act on his college campus. He doused himself in gasoline and set himself on fire. Against all odds, he managed to yet again survive through this horrific ordeal. The police had received prior information about Ramon's mental health challenges, but they didn't classify the incident as an attempt by Ramon to end his own life. It remained uncertain whether this action was a result of the effects of post-traumatic stress disorder. In a news article published a few weeks after the incident, it was reported that Ramon had made significant progress in his recovery. He was able to be taken off a ventilator, and his burns were gradually healing. Now, take this last bit with a grain of salt, but I was able to find one more link in Ramon's story, fast-forwarding all the way to 2021. There's a YouTube short by someone called Ramon Fry, and it does indeed look like an older version of him. The video is an application for the show Naked and Afraid, and in it, he unfortunately mentions he's been living with paranoid schizophrenia, but also that he's been dealing with it unmedicated. Severe trauma can contribute to the development of schizophrenia in those who are genetically prone, so this would make sense. As for Earl, he got back out of jail in March. This story is sad more than anything, and I hope Ramon can get what he needs, while praying that Earl is too old to cause any more damage to anyone else, though being 62 didn't stop him last time. Identity theft is an everyday occurrence as a result of scammers looking for a way to make a quick buck off an unsuspecting victim. However, what isn't an everyday occurrence is someone seriously stealing another person's identity without any clear financial incentive. Sure, there are a myriad of motives for doing so other than money, but they get progressively weirder. One such unorthodox manifestation of identity theft is digital kidnapping, where an unfamiliar person appropriates a minor's photo from the internet and presents them as their own child. They share these images on their social media accounts, deriving satisfaction from the attention and positive responses they receive for showing off their supposed kids. Sometimes specific hashtags are employed alongside these pictures to indicate to onlookers that the individual posting them is participating in role-playing and constructing a fictional world that is distinct from their real life. But sometimes they leave no indication that they're doing this fantasy. Take the case of Ashley, who was featured on Dr. Phil in 2016 due to a family that, on the surface, she had seemingly no connection with. However, behind the scenes, her online presence was much more intertwined with theirs. You see, she was stealing this couple's children from Facebook and passing them off as her own, and she had been doing it for 4 years. April and Nathan had 2 twin daughters, Vivian and Sophie, who were 4 years old. But in Ashley's heads, their names were Adaya and Camberlyn. They were perfectly healthy, but Ashley's narrative was that one of them was suffering. Every single picture April posted, Ashley would repost on her own page with her own story.
They took my photos and made it a complete of her as their mom and has a story to go along with every single picture with my girls.
When the girls were wearing names on them, she would blur that out. Whether April was visible in any reflections, she would blur that out as well. Ashley made a room with cribs which she painted the same color as the couple's own room. She went as far as framing pictures of the girls all over Nathan called the police on Ashley when they first discovered this, at which point they discovered that she had been previously arrested for burglary, assault, and computer fraud, and had spent time in jail for these offenses. However, the police said they couldn't believe this. Obviously, taking someone else's photos and re-uploading them isn't a crime. They tried asking her to stop before, but she didn't relent.
Sent her a message that we know that she has stolen photos of our babies. He's told her that we contacted the police.
We never heard a response. We thought that was the end of it.
Ashley's narrative included the caveat that she lost custody of the children and her mother-in-law had custody of them instead, an excuse she evidently made up so she wouldn't have to produce the children if anyone asked her to, but she made comments indicative that soon that might change, which when April, Nathan, and Ashley all finally met for the first time on the show, it was nothing short of enthralling. Ashley had started by vehemently denying the claims in the pre-interview, claiming she did indeed have her own daughters, which were the same age, stealing photos and had never even seen April or Nathan before. The problem was, on the intake forum, she slipped up and claims to have no children of her own. It was astonishing that, when she was first brought out by herself and Dr. Phil asked her about her pregnancy and details related to it, she had explanations for everything. She knew exactly how many weeks pregnant she was and even the birth weight of her daughters, but all of it was fabricated. She also inadvertently she knew what she was doing, answering a hypothetical.
How do you think a mother would feel if somebody was jacking their children and claiming them as their own and putting their names on them and all that? I mean, how would a mother feel if that was?
I think I'd definitely feel possibly scared.
Ashley through her Facebook matter, where he inevitably found hundreds of stolen photos.
Damn, bro.
How she thought she was going to get away with it by just claiming she didn't know how all the pictures got on her page is beyond me.
Tell me who these girls are.
I don't know.
They're on your Facebook page. Tell me who these girls are.
My baby girls, Sophie and Vivi.
Apparently, she tried to clean up the crime scene before coming, but she didn't have enough time to do it thoroughly.
And you deleted about 100 of them today.
I haven't been on my...
But you came to
day.
Well, you've been deleting recently, but you didn't get them all deleted before you came to the stage today.
It's hilarious to watch her lie through her teeth, but what's even funnier is watching yell at her while catching her in 4K.
I have tracked your digital footprint all through the internet. You decided to sell this lamp. That lamp is a picture of their 2 girls hanging in your house. In your house, and this is a picture of you right here.
After the doc did some smooth talking to coax a confession out of her, she cracked.
Your enemies are winning.
Yes, Phil. I really do.
She gave the excuse that she was doing this to have the experiences she was definitely not sons and daughters, but she was obviously still lying because she had no children to speak of. The show even checked in with her mother-in-law, and she had never even taken care of any children on Ashley's behalf. Even the police were able to affirm that she wasn't pregnant at the time she claimed to have been. At the end of the day, Ashley agreed to stop stalking the couple and to receive professional help.
And you absolutely will leave these people alone. Take everything down off of the internet. Help that will offer.
We don't know what happened in her story after this point, but from the outside it was evident she was looking for attention and sympathy by doing all of this. How far she actually took her own fantasies inside her mind is anyone's guess. Out of all of the frauds in this video, perhaps none has a more impressive web of lies than Sarah DeLashman. She would end up on Dr. Phil in 2019 after many, many years of lying to friends and family, defrauding any and every person or organization she could get herself entangled with. When her victims, who would appear on the show to confront her, once financial fraud is involved, lying goes from a civil law to a crime. The full list of her lies to Brian, Liz, and Bethany alone are simply astounding. When Sarah went on Dr. Phil to supposedly complain about everything, she started by portraying herself as some kind of victim, which is never a good sign.
I have a line. The last few years, I've done all kinds of extreme measures to make my life seem more exciting.
She implied she was looking for attention rather than any kind of financial incentive, and started by saying her first big lie was faking cancer, when, keep in mind, she had before that. She also blamed what she did on an addiction, as if it was her fault or she couldn't control it.
I didn't mean to hurt you guys the way that I did. Just such a compulsion that I couldn't control.
Sarah, it's way more than a compulsion. I mean, even just on that video, it's just an addiction to lying. This is way bigger and much more sick than just an addiction to lying.
I don't even believe a word you're saying.
Obviously, things could never be patched up between Sarah and her victims that easily, especially since she wasn't being forthcoming with the truth. She had such a large impact on her friends' lives, as well as those around her who were truly disabled. This was not a case of spilled milk.
You ruined our life. You took me away from my life, my family, my other friends. Hours of together.
You've infiltrated a sacred temple, and you are worse than cancer. Do you hear me?
Better yet, when asked what wrong she had committed or how exactly she hurt these people she had called her friends, she couldn't muster up even a shred of a satisfactory response, making her come across as a bona fide sociopath.
What have you done to her?
I mean, just lying to her and taking her away from her family and her friends and, you know, the stuff that she, work and the stuff that's important to her life as well.
You see the problem? Here's the problem. Because she doesn't
Your enemies have reached halfway.
How to stand in your shoes because she doesn't have empathy. And that's why she said, well, I wasted her time. I wasted her time. That's why there's no genuine remorse here.
Some speculate she is one, considering how she accidentally smiled at the myriad of lies, as if she were taking pleasure in an accomplishment.
It took a lot of brain power to have to keep up the charade. If you're playing, hockey and you want to hold the stick and hit the puck, you can't do that. And you just grab the stick and do it yourself, but you have to refrain from doing it.
After her appearance on Dr. Phil in 2019, she would be charged with defrauding two nonprofit bases at the camp and summit that should have rightfully gone to genuinely disabled individuals. In 2020, she would plead guilty to the charges, as well as confessing to obtaining a $5,000 bike for free by buying it, then reporting the charge as fraudulent. In 2021, she was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison, and evidence presented at the hearing demonstrated that she had been unsuspecting individuals since 2006. She was released from prison in March 2022. 2022 would see an entire true crime podcast being made to cover her extensive history of lying, attempting to unravel her complicated motives in the process. The investigation covered other people she had lied to, including telling people she was trapped in abusive relationships, or that she was a mother who had lost her children. It's clear that she's suffering from a severe personality disorder or sociopathy, and whether she will ever truly get help or change her ways is unknown. I've been Turkey Tom. Thanks for watching. Until next time, leave me alone.
Enemy team is 3 out from victory.